Howdy, folks. I'm Mark, and today I am joined once again by Nate McKeever. Nate, thank you for joining me for this short talk about video games.
Will it be short, Mark?
We'll
That is
try.
the question. We will endeavor.
Do it, man.
It'll be shorter than probably some of our other conversations.
That's true. It'll be shorter than an episode of Backlog Breakdown, which is a great podcast you should all go listen to. But you are listening to Quick Play, so let's get right into it. This is a Game of the Decade conversation. I've been giving this spiel for 4 episodes now, and I'm trying to make it a little bit different every time, but we're 5 years in 2020s, so we're half a decade through the 2020s. And so throughout probably this whole year, maybe, we're running an ongoing series asking our guests, what's your game of the decade? Which feels like a very silly question to ask because, like we said, it's half a decade, but it's a nice checkpoint as we're checking in on the 2020s and the state of video games. And we get just talk about games that we like. Nate, you had a thought there.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think it's that silly. I think it's perhaps it's
I'll
a bit premature.
Yes.
But
that's partly the point.
I think that it's like a good sort of like just check in. So yeah, it's, I don't know. I told you sort of earlier, when you sort of pitched this idea, like saying like, hey, going forward, this is something that I kind of want to like, dip into and sort of tag in. I was like, oh, that is, I loved it. So I'm excited.
Thank you. Well, now it's your turn. You reached out and you like reserved your game ahead of time.
I'm glad I did because apparently somebody tried to snipe
Matt almost tried to steal it.
Well, I beat you, Matt. Good for me.
Well, joke's on you that he did get to talk about Hades just a little bit in the episode, which will be new for you. It's coming out this week. It's timey-wimey stuff. Anyway, Nate, what's been your game of the decade so far?
So far, it's been Hades. Now,
yes.
I do need to sort of, it's Hades. It was almost Marvel Snap. But then I decided like, that's just too whatever. Like,
sure. A little too fraught for you.
Yeah.
It's a complicated relationship.
I have a really I actually had to pull it off my phone again. And what I have found is that, by playing it only on my laptop, it does sort of, it is not nearly as infuriating, but anyways, like, I think the other thing is Hades is just a much more interesting game to talk about. And I think long-term, Hades will probably be one of my favorite games for a long, long time. Unless, Supergiant,
there's Hades 2 coming out.
Hades 2 could just sort of like rock my world, or it could just ruin everything. Who knows? A bit of an actual honorable mention though. I almost did a bit of a pivot because I started playing Returnal a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that game is very similar to, in my opinion, sort of like it evokes some of the same feelings that Hades did.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things I like about both of these games is like, in some ways, Hades isn't as big a departure, but it is a game that completely recontextualizes the developer.
Okay.
And that, like, I've liked Supergiant since the Bastion days. I've played all their games, and prior to Hades, my list was probably Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, like in that order. Like, and sometimes Transistor would supplant Bastion. But now it's Hades with a bullet. And I think the thing is, like, it's the most triple I out of all their games. And I think the thing is, like, it's the best encapsulation of what I think Supergiant is capable of. So far, where it's like there were sort of like glimmers of it and snatches of it in the other games, where it's like there's this cleverness and there's a sort of a very sort of clear, I think, design philosophy, and they're very good at executing. I just think that Hades by far is the one that they just they crushed it, and it was kind of
Yeah.
vindicating because it was the first time too where not only was it sort of like this critical darling, but it was a bit of a commercial darling too. And I was so
Mm-hmm.
thrilled for them. And so as a bit
Yeah.
of a parallel, I think Returnal is sort of very similar in that sort of like how it recontextualizes Housemark. But
Yeah.
I'm not here to talk about Returnal.
Interesting. Well, also both of those being like roguelite,
Mhm.
is I feel like that's also just been this being a game of the decade conversation. I feel like 2020s is kind of when roguelites became really mainstream. I'm trying to think if others, like my experience with Hades, I never really got into roguelites, but I loved Hades. And I was always told if you don't like roguelites, Hades the ones to try. And it's true enough. I got it. Like I get why people are into this and why people like this loop. So even just the 2020s being the decade of roguelites so far, even if that trend feels a little bit dated now, even 5 years in. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think so I think especially in sort of those two are sort of like the cream of the crop, right? Those are
Sure.
the most premier. And I think like Returnal is definitely like a little more inaccessible and a lot more hardcore. It's not to say Hades doesn't have its own like sort of like difficulty spike, but
Sure.
I think Hades is just like, again, it's sort of, it's got that super giant polish. The music is perfect. Like that soundtrack is
Mm-hmm.
so stinking good. That like sort of Mediterranean heavy metal
It
grindy.
the whole game is just very confident in its style and presentation of like from the artwork to the music. Like they know what they want to do and they're doing it.
And there's just I think too it's so there's that confidence, right, in every design decision, but there's also like just a mastery and execution. I don't think there's really I don't think there's a dead spot in that game. Like I've never
Yeah.
like you know how so many times you play a game and you hit a point and you're just like, ah, I'm kind of like stalling out a little bit or
Ready for this to be done. Like I'm ready to roll credits. And yeah.
and I mean I had 90 hours in the original Hades, and I think it kind of bums me out because I'm pretty sure if I could transfer my save from my Switch to PlayStation, I'd just pop the plat.
Sure.
Um, but I love that game, and it wasn't even like I was like, okay, like I think it's time to move on, but it wasn't like, oh, I don't like this game anymore, or it's like I'm like bored, or it was more like I just need to do other things. Like this game has sort of chewed up enough.
Right.
So yeah.
So this is a bit of a backing up question, but like, what is the game about to you? Like, how when you describe the game, what's the stuff that you want to talk about when you're like someone asks, "What's Hades about?"
Well,
What do you want to go with that?
okay, so it's got like this perfect. Uh, I think like I think that on the surface, it's the mechanics. Like it's got
Mm.
this like perfect loop, the sort of the quick in and out, and the sort of the constant drive to sort of, can I do better? Can I get a better build or
Yeah.
whatever? So there's that. But I would also say I think it's got like a really that story has way more heart than I think it has any right to in a lot of ways. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
about the weird relationship between fathers and sons. It's about um, a young man or a young demigod in a lot of ways, sort of. So it starts out in open rebellion, but then he finds his path, like he finds his calling, like his reason for being, instead of just being sort of a layabout cad, he becomes a man. And he goes from sort of like there is um a meaningful progression with Zagreus where he's always kind of like a little bit of a jerk. Like,
Sure.
he's always a little antagonistic with his
As
dad.
as a hellion would naturally be, a
Yeah.
guy who grew up in hell, basically.
Yeah. But like there is a point, especially sort of as you go, and it's about like sort of like the messiness of family and just how that yeah, and sort of, and it just explores those things in such an interesting way that I know. So the one thing that is kind of controversial is like the fact that like you have to beat the game like 10 times before you actually see the actual end.
Sure.
And that can be kind of challenging, you know, like some of those, like, especially if you get like garbage loadouts or whatever. Yeah, if the RNG kind of stiffs you on that game, it does get a little bit whatever. It gets more difficult, but I don't think it.
Yeah.
But I do think like, again, it's just such a weird, like there's a technical mastery in that gameplay loop. And then it's sort of that story and the sort of the drawing out of that story is it's kind of understated and it's a little subtle, but once it's there, it's weird. Like, because again, it's way better than it has any right to be.
Yeah. My experience was I beat Hades once and was like, that was great. I'm going to come back to this because I know I have to do more of it because there's kind of like the twist ending ish to, is there, for your experience of playing the game of as much as you've played, was it more enjoyable leading up to like your first beating Hades, or was it after that? If the more post game stuff is not the right word because there's so much more of it, but yeah.
So there's that initial, like the first time you beat your first run, or that first run that you get all the way through, there's like this massive like dopamine, like, yes, I have done it.
Right.
And then there is kind of like this moment of despair, right? Where you're like, oh no, what are they doing to me?
Yeah.
But I think once you get past that, and again, it's really the way that the story sort of unfolds, and you sort of see again that sort of like that grudging respect between, you know, even Zagreus and his father, where it's like the relationship. I don't think it hits you until sort of you've had some time to sit with it.
Yeah.
I would say that like it's not that big. Again, it's not that huge like dopamine, like I did it. But there is a sort of narrative closure that when you get through all of the story, and I it sounds like so vague because I don't want to spoil anything.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But when you get to the point where you have like you've really beaten the game, it's really satisfying.
Nice.
And I think they really do earn it. Like in hindsight, it's like one of those things that like at the time I was so sort of in that loop that I didn't appreciate it. But I think as I stand back from it, I'm like, no, this is way better. Like I kind of wish that I had sort of tuned in a little bit more to that. Whereas I don't like, and so now that makes me want to go just play it again. Like
I'm in this weird rhythm where I played it on Game Pass, so it's like I don't really have access to that save anymore. I'm constantly like tempted to get it on Steam, but I'm also like I could just wait for Hades 2, which theoretically I got the Steam Deck. I could just play early access, but I want to wait for the full thing. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know, man. Mark, I really think like it's just worth the ride, and you can probably it's what, like $20 now or something like that. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's like on sale, but for down to 10 often. So,
dude, I think it's worth the ride to just kind of like. I mean, I like listen. I'm gonna Hades 2. Hades 2 is like one of those things where I'm like, I could get it early access. I could.
Yeah,
I could, but I keep making myself wait.
right.
I think, dude, like, I'd love to kind of like see what you like. Okay, and so here's the thing.
Yeah.
I think this is a bad game to binge because it
Hmm.
does. There is
Interesting.
like a little bit of. I enjoyed it the whole time, and I think it's a really enjoyable gameplay loop. But I think that it does kind of diminish. And I think that's like even what I was talking about
Hmm.
with it kind of like dilutes the experience where it's like I think it's better sort of like taken in chunks and have a little bit of time to process some of that narrative because again
Yeah.
that story the way the story unfolds it is pretty subtle and once you I mean especially like once you've already done it one time so
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a curve, but it's like you've already done it. So like that's the first time you complete a run, that's always the hardest. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
um, so yeah, I don't know. I would just say like, dude, it's worth the burn.
Oh man. Well, I guess too. Is there anything you wish was different about it? Like, what's your critiques?
I do. um, hmm. Okay, and this has more to do with the fact that like I I have done a lot to temper this instinct, but I want to be a completionist, and so
Oh,
yeah, and
that's
especially
the
sort of
siren
like
song.
yeah, and there's a lot of meat on that bone. I think I would trim. I don't think it's bloated, but I would just sort of like maybe try and tighten it up a little bit more. Where it's like, I mean, you can do a run. I think in probably 30 to 45 minutes, like a full
Hmm.
run. Um,
Yeah.
when you're sort of at that point, I don't. Hmm. Okay, and this is kind of runs counter to just roguelikes and roguelites in general.
Sure.
But I would make, and there is some of this, but I would make it more substantial. Like I would make it so that there is a slightly more substantial sort of like permanent, like that new Housemark game that's coming out, Saros, or
Yeah. I think that's it.
the whole one of the premises like every time you die, there is sort of you get a little stronger every time. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think like and I think that's actually you could that's oh that dude turn on that god mode. Um yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, turn it on.
That-
Like
That's true. That's what I can do because like part of it is like I don't want to go through the whole thing again of like building up Zagreus, like buying all the upgrades. That would be a good way to get just
I
basically get my save file back by
yeah, like
pushing
I
it.
mean it's not easy mode, but it is also kind of like easy mode.
Sure.
Where it does like sort of cuz I think when you turn that on every time you die you get like a little tougher or something like that. So just like I think like just like honestly like there's nothing I'd add to it. It's like you have god mode. So yeah, that's like
Sure. Yeah.
I
I
I
I
think
do
it's
wish it was. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think it's pretty stinking close to being a perfect game.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
no such thing, but boy howdy does it get
Yeah.
close.
I do wish there was more variety, which is like the whole point is you're going through the same thing over and over again. So that's would be
Mm,
counterintuitive. But I think it's like when I finished the first run and I was like, I want to take a break because I don't want to fight Theseus and the Minotaur again. Like just that boss battle was always super annoying to me. And it was like it just kind of the same it being the same biomes every single time, one after the other, was like this kind of feels like it's getting repetitive, and I know that's the point. Like, but I don't know. What do
okay,
you think?
so Theseus and the Minotaur. It's funny that you say that because they actually things do shift and like things actually escalate
Yeah,
to a
yeah.
point
There's
that's like kind
further
of
development.
yeah, kind of ridiculous. And
Okay,
okay, so that part is like a little samey, I guess, but I never. I used to hate Theseus so much. I just wanted to punch him in his smug face.
it made him the worst.
No,
It's like
he's
the
just
Minotaur is actually kind of a cool dude.
yeah,
Theseus is just
he's just such a punk. He's just such a punk. Um, so there is like some escalation, but yeah, you know what? Like it would be kind of cool to maybe okay. So like one way that I think they could really like improve it is maybe add like additional boss encounters, so that like you unlock new boss encounters, like because like you
Yeah.
unlock new mini bosses and sub bosses. Like it would also be kind of cool to just have like, yeah, to like roll up and have to fight something that isn't, Theseus and the Minotaur, or like one
Yeah.
of the Furies. Um,
Yeah.
so
Like, yeah, because the Furies do switch out every
yeah,
so often. And but yeah, but also, like, if you start changing all these things, like, will it really be the same game?
I don't
That's a
know
little
that those are
Theseus joke for you there. But go ahead.
ship of Theseus. I
I,
see. I
you had a
see.
genuine thought out going off my dumb joke, but
No. It's just tough, I think, because like it is one of those games where I think I like I said, I never hit that point where it's like, this is boring. Like, I just want to get rid of it. Like, I'm done.
sure.
I kind of was like, I think it's time for me to just move on. But, yeah, yeah,
Nice.
it's just, I don't know, man. Hades is just so cool. It's like, it's the music, it is just, again, it is just such a perfect encapsulation of, I think, like what, like, and I just love Supergiant's story. Like, they're tiny
Mm-hmm.
but mighty kind of like vibe where it's just, they really are kind of like rock stars in a lot of ways, in my opinion. I just think that what they do with just game design in theory, but just they always have such a cohesive and clean and compelling vision for their games, and they execute so well. I mean,
Yeah.
like I didn't even really like, I didn't like Pyre that much, but I still love Pyre. Like, it's my least
Gotcha.
favorite Supergiant game, but I'm like, it's probably better than a lot of other games out there. And
I haven't
it's,
played any of these games. I should check them out more.
oh,
I've only played Hades of their stuff.
so they're not okay. I would play them in release order. I think
Okay.
Bastion is very akin to like, it's like a Link to the Past, Legend of Zelda. It's like very sort of like styled. It
Okay.
is, but it isn't.
Yes,
Like,
I've seen that now. Like looking at it, it's like I remember these trailers and everything.
mhm.
Yeah.
Transistor, Transistor is, I think, a little subversive because it's got this mechanic where you can play, you can do combat in an active thing, but the game really shines. Like, there's this kind of like almost like pause mode thing where you can map out your moves and stuff, and then it kind of does this weird like thing where it's like half like RTS or like turn-based strategy role playing. I don't know, but I think,
Interesting.
and then Pyre is like if NBA Jam and Oregon Trail had a baby in a absurdist fantasy kind of. Oh man, it's
That's
so. Pyre is,
what in the world. Like, I
dude.
don't know where you're going with that.
It is so wild. Like I like the gameplay least, in that like I didn't like that but it's good. It's still really
Okay.
good, but it's got this
Sure.
weird sort of like visual novel kind of. Pyre is in some ways, I think, the most ambitious because it's doing like 8 different things and it kind of does all of them really well.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, but
Man.
like
That's
all the
pretty cool.
soundtracks are great. It's
That's true.
all like, and I think I tend to be sort of an aesthetics guy. So like they all have like a really great visual language and just a great like design, like period. Like,
Yeah.
and each one of them are sort of very, man, I gotta, yeah, but Hades is great. I think in some ways, like I would really recommend, Mark, like, yeah, just check out all of them. And I think all of them hold up, fairly well. It's been a while, but it's like, yeah, Bastion.
Sure.
I haven't played any of these things in a few years, but man,
Sure.
I think I did sort of a run of everything, and then Hades came out, and I was like, yes. I don't think I replayed Bastion or Transistor all the way through. I think I just kind of was like, I played around. I was like, oh yes, I love these things. And then I did a full playthrough of Pyre because that was the one that I had sort of slept on. And then Hades came out and I was like, okay, let's go.
Nice.
So
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Nate, our time is short here, but before we go, what's one hope that you have for the rest of the decade?
I think just it's sort of a broader industry sort of hope is I hope that some of these companies will get away from like the big grabs, and that they'll sort of embrace more. So I look at games like Astro Bot, right?
Yeah.
And I look at something like Hades, where it's like these smaller endeavors that probably didn't cost $300 million to make, but still are just like chock full of heart. And don't get me wrong, I love the big spectacle. Like I love God of War. I love like the Sony first party, like the Sad Dad Simulator stuff. Like, I love that stuff. But I also think that we're kind of getting to a point where it's like we're losing some of the heart. Like there's so much of this desire to make things like big and meaningful and impactful and dramatic that we've forgotten. Like, I think, so Hades is like a little dramatic or whatever, but like even like looking at Astro Bot, like it's just got a lot of heart and it's got a lot of charm. I think like Nintendo is really great at sort of like never straying too far from that. Like I think that's, but so it's more of like sort of looking at like Sony and a lot of these big third party publishers is like, yes, give us the spectacle, but give us like the passion projects too. Like give us like the artsy fartsy, like chock full of heart, and like, sort of like, let me see something that's maybe not super polished, but it's real. Like,
get some grit.
Not even, but just like heart, like just charm and real character. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
So that, I think, and
let's see that too.
And and it doesn't, I know this is kind of like compounding, but like, and it doesn't need, not everything needs to be like $300 million to make. Can we just be a little smarter and say like, hey, let's like, like scope down a little bit, like, downsize.
Yeah. That's good stuff. I do like that. Well, Nate, one final segment here. One name, one game. What are you playing?
I have kind of been, I've only done one session so far, but I've kind of been dipping my toes into Darktide with my brother. And I have a threesome that, well, that sounds a little, but
interesting. Do you now?
Like, let's not be dirty, folks. Mark and I made it weird, but my sort of
referenced it.
Yeah, my squad that I squad up with my brother and my best friend fairly frequently, and we've been going through Warhammer 40K's Darktide. That game is crazy fun.
Interesting.
I love a good grimdark. Like I love grimdark fantasy. It's kind of like, and I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I think you just like the things that you like. And so I like Glenn Cook's The Black Company. I like, in theory, like Warhammer 40K. Like I like grimdark. I'm like, yeah, like let's put some mud and blood and feels bad in it. And I just think it's a cool universe. It's a really fun game, and I'm having a lot of fun just being a big old ogre. I'm a biggin, and I got big guns, and I bash dudes with a big stick. and it's sick.
What's not to love?
Yeah, it's just arcadey, like insane fun. And just yeah. So yeah,
nice, good stuff.
How about you, man? What have you been playing?
Here's the thing: I haven't played it yet. What I want to do is I've had my eye on Pikmin 4. Probably try out that demo and see what I'm into. See if I like it. It's the sort of thing of I might bounce off of it or I might make it my entire personality. So we shall see what happens. But
it's weird because that game provokes that response in a lot of people. Like it's either
I haven't played any Pikmin games, so we'll see.
Like I kind of find myself like I want to like Pikmin more than I actually do. Like every time I've played a Pikmin game, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And then I'm like, eh. So much to the chagrin of my friend and co-host, Joshua.
Oh, true. Well, maybe I can help him feel better about his life choices. Well, thank you all for, first, let me say, Nate, thank you for joining me for this podcast and the one before it.
Thanks for having me, dude. Like, I'm so glad that I didn't like run too long. I felt really bad last time.
You're good.
We're not that much shorter either, actually. So,
I mean, we're at least 75% shorter than the previous one of our stat cards one that was like 40 minutes long. So we're making good time.
Good.
But Nate, where else out on the internet?
Well, the aforementioned Backlog Breakdown podcast. We do a full episode every other week, and then there's a bite-sized, kind of filler. If you like any shade of what you've heard here, I can't guarantee that you're going to like anything I say there. Yeah,
I can say that. Y'all are a huge inspiration for this podcast. So go check it out too.
Well, shucks, dude.
There you go. Part of the soup.
Yeah, dude. But man, now you flustered me. I don't take praise well. I love it. I love hearing it, but it also makes me like a little weird. But I would say, so I'm not really on the socials. You can, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that. You can follow me at Nate _McKeever. But like I said, I'm not super present there. I tend to be pretty lurky these days when it comes to that stuff. I think the only other place is like the Discord server for the breakdown, and you're a lurker there. That's true. I kind of lurk there too, honestly. Like I stick my head in when there's too many shenanigans, and I'm like, no, stop shenaniganing.
Stop it. Well, thank you again for joining me. Thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on the major podcasting services or on YouTube. You can press all the good buttons if you enjoyed this conversation. You can find us on the proper socials at Quick Play Pod and let us know, is this the game of the decade? What was the game we were talking about again?
Hades?
Hades, no. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, it's terrible. Horrific. And I loved it.